Okay, determine an expression for f of g of x. So all that means is I'm putting g into f. So if I write f g of x, so f, I'm going to put that in a different color, the g of x. It means I take my original f function, which was 1 over the square root of x, but instead of doing the square root of x, see here we've got x and x, I'm going to put in g of x there. So at this point, I'm actually going to just write g of x just to make it really clear what's happening for you, the viewer, okay? You don't have to write this if you don't want to in the exam. That's okay. But if it helps you, go for it. So if I put in g of x, I'm going to get 1 over the square root of, and my g of x is 5 take away x. Simple as that, okay? So you're putting in g into f. And yeah, the marking scheme says you'll get, without working, you'll get this, but I think it's worth just taking your time and reminding yourself what's going where. So yeah, the next bit is talking about the range of values for which it is undefined, the range of which where it's undefined. Okay, so there's two things you need to remember with this. Is that you cannot divide by a negative. Okay, so if I do 1 over x, right, x cannot be equal to 0. I can't divide by 0. Okay. The other thing is I cannot take the square root of a negative. So x here has to be greater than 0 to equal to 0. So greater than or equal to 0. It cannot be less than 0. It can't be a negative number. These are the two things that you need to remember when you're doing these ranges, okay? You're doing like what values can it not be, okay? So what have we got then? We've got a square root and a 1 over. Okay, so if I've got 1 over the square root of 5 take away x, this section here, it can't equal 0, can it? Yeah, so the square root of 5 take away x cannot equal 0. That's our first one. So let's try and rearrange that to give us something for x. So if I was to square both sides, yeah, so 5 cannot be equal to x. Makes sense, doesn't it? You know, we can't have, if we put 5 in, we get 0. The square root of 0 is 0. 1 divided by 0, I can't do that, okay? So that's my first one, I can't do that, okay? The second one is saying, well, we said that the square root of 5 take away x, right? That can't be less than 0. Okay, this has to be greater than or equal to 0. It has to be greater than or equal to 0. So that means that 5 take away x squared, it has to be greater than or equal to 0. So that means that 5 has to be greater than or equal to x. So x has to be less than or equal to 5. So it makes sense. If x is less than 5, we're going to have a positive number. Okay, so if it was 4, we'd have 1, 5 take away 4. If we had like negative 2, positive. Okay, so that makes sense to me. So we're saying we can't equal x, right? We can't equal x, and x has to be less than or equal to 5. So what values of x can I have then? So if you were just to imagine that, you know, you've got a wee number line. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, all the way. We're saying that it can't be equal to 5, okay? And x has to be less than or equal to 5. So we're saying that this range here is okay. That's all okay, isn't it? X has to be less than or equal to 5, but we just said up here it can't be equal to 5. So these are the ones that are okay. So that means what's not okay, because that's what the question's saying, it was state the domain for which is undefined, is saying that all of these, that's not okay. Yeah, not okay. So I would be saying for my final answer, I'd be saying that x, so for I'll say for undefined, x be greater than or equal to 5. Because we said when it's equal to 5, it breaks down, and we said that x, we wanted it to be less than 5, so it has to be greater than 5. So that's your little range in there. So it's a wee bit of thinking about. There's probably an easier way of doing it than the way I've done it there. But that's how I think about it. The point is to think on these two rules. You can't divide by 0 and you can't take the square root of a negative. Okay, so if you think on it like that, you're going to do okay. So yeah. Also, feel free to kind of picture a little number line as well. I think that's actually quite a useful thing. And each time you come up with a rule, put the number in and see what you get out. So at that point, x less than or equal to 5. Does that make sense? Well, yeah, if you put in 5, you get 0, you can do the square root of 0. What about if it's negative 2? Yeah, square root of 7, that's okay. So just, have a look through there. But yeah, it'd be undefined when x is greater than or equal to 5.